how I went from this, no delts. I mean, I wasn't even particularly lean there. Not much of a chest. I mean, I guess I looked good for a guy. I think a lot of guys would be happy with that. To this, a little leaner, a little bigger, but not big. Like, this is not big. Like, study specifically how I really don't have, popping downs. I don't look like I'm on a sauce. I look like I'm totally natty here. To running a cycle of testosterone, just about a half a gram a week for 3 months, cycling down after that cycle of testosterone to sports TRT, which was at the time just around 300 milligrams a week for an additional month, but then back down to what ended up being 100 milligrams a week of testosterone, and going from that, basically like, essentially not looking saucy and not having delts, to this on 100 milligrams a week and having the saucy look regarding delts and having ended up with like a bigger chest and a generally bigger physique. Let's talk about how I did this, how I feel at 100 milligrams a week, how running a cycle and then bumping going down to sports TRT wasn't even a conscious, I mean, obviously it was conscious, but like the whole strategy wasn't even a conscious effort. Have half a gram of test, then go down to 300, then work down to 100, but it ended up working out perfectly. All right, in the meantime, look, Cortex Labs is a TRT guidance, sexual dysfunction resolution, and performance optimization company. Primary thing that we do is help guys that are on HRT to get sexual function back and to optimize libido and erections. That is my specialty. You can either hire me for a one-off call, okay, where we'll look at your protocol and get to the bottom of what's going on to fix libido and erections, or some of these things take time. We've got one-on-one, 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month packages with multiple protocol changes. You can hire me for any of that stuff in under a minute. We'll be on the fact-finding interaction as soon as tomorrow. I'm the guy that gets the call when people can't dial in on TRT. That is my specialty. Let's go. Also, in the description of this video is, in my humble opinion, one of the best nootropic stacks on the planet that I built after 15 years of experience. It is called Torque. It's like Adderall without the side effects, and you can buy it down the description of this video. All right, so let's talk about how I went from this to that to now this and ended up looking, I would say, moderately saucy without even really having a strategy beforehand. All right, so let's look at the timeline. First thing that happened was I went on 560 milligrams of testosterone enanthate per week. I injected that intramuscularly, mostly in the glutes, and I was running 160 milligrams of test enanthate every other day. That was the cycle. Now, in between that cycle, kind of after 7 days or so, initially, I got test flu. Test flu is a set of symptoms that most resemble having the flu. I felt tired. I felt achy. I just felt sick. I felt like my immune system was acting up. I just felt terrible. So I dialed down to 400 and something milligrams of test prop, ran that for about a week and a half, and then bumped back up to that 560 dose of, again, doing 160 milligrams every other day. I ran that for a total of 3 months straight. And on those days, I don't really think there was a day off, but there may have been like a Sunday off here and there. I was at the gym pushing fucking hard. Okay. I had the strength. I had the energy. I wasn't eating like a crazy person, but I was eating enough. I was in a surplus some days and a deficit other days. I'm not the type that likes to go on a bulk. I just don't like feeling fat. I did splits. I worked on chest one day, bench, just regular bench, and then incline press. I would do chest another day, a separate day, but I would do chest flies, and the Smith machine where you sort of press forward. I would work on delts another day. I had a lot of focus on delts, doing flies, laying on an incline bench and doing this motion here like that. And then on other days, I would just strictly focus on biceps. That was the extent of working out that I did, but I just did it every day. It'd be like chest, shoulders, biceps, chest, delts, biceps, chest, shoulders, biceps. That's pretty much the split. And in the absolute beginning of it all, just on, prior being on TRT, and this is another point I want to make, people are like, how are you look the way you look, which, people claim is not saucy. And believe me, I've not been on super cycles forever. I've largely been on TRT. I was strictly on TRT, before last summer. So I went from this to then leaning out. So I was still on just TRT at this point, TRT doses, but I leaned out significantly so you could actually see, where I was at. If you notice, I really just do not have three-dimensional delts. They are round, but they are not big in any capacity. My chest is okay. Biceps are okay. Generally speaking, I think I had like a moderately okay physique. Again, kind of look like a natty, a dude that, isn't running gear or TRT, and kind of that's where I was at. But this is the beginning. Right after this is when I started the cycle. Again, I had my splits of chest, shoulders, and biceps, and I worked very hard every day without fail with the occasional 1 day break. There was one point at which I was eating a lot, but believe me, I did not bulk. I did not consciously bulk throughout this period. It was just one period where I felt like I was I was certainly overweight and had more body fat, and that was right here, okay? That there is kind of the max of the body fat that I had. Obviously, I had packed on significant size. If you look at that compared to this, right? You look at my size there, and then you look at my size kind of during all this. This is probably the absolute biggest that I think I've ever been throughout this, and a good degree of that, though, is muscle mass, is also the fat that I had on and the calories that I was eating for a certain degree of time, which helped fuel some growth. Again, back to the timeline, after running 560 for 3 months, I had moved down to what I would call sports TRT and not a cycle, which is 300 milligrams a week. I was injecting that every 3.5 days at 150 milligrams. I did that for 1 month and 1 month only, and then cycled down to 100 milligrams a week of test. And this is what I ended up with, okay? So, you essentially see the size that I had when I was kind of big and, maybe bulking for like 3 weeks or so, kind of at my absolute biggest in terms of mass. I retained a good bit of that mass, but the critical point here is that I was able to actually run a blasting cruise successfully for what was my first time, and I ended up like putting on a lot of fucking mass and did what ultimately I wanted to do, which was, okay, yeah, build a chest to the extent that I can genetically, but also I really wanted to focus on delts, and I was able to get the 3D delt look finally, and this picture was taken very, very recently. This is me on 100 milligrams of test a week. And this is a shot of me now as well, just with a little better lighting, just to kind of see the chest point of view of what I'm left over with and what I'm able to maintain right now at 100 milligrams a week. So if we put these two images side by side, you can actually tell, here's pre-cycle, this is post-cycle. And, the post-cycle picture was taken very recently, and this is basically my physique right now after a mild pump. So let's talk about how I was able to do this. And listen, believe me, I did not believe that I was going to be able to, go on a short cycle for 3 months, cycle down to sports TRT at 300 milligrams for 1 month, and then go back to 100 milligrams a week and maintain any degree of size. I actually thought, considering my own history with just TRT, that I would shrink down to, pre-cycle levels, and I really wouldn't be left over with much of anything, maybe a little bit. But I ended up, generally just becoming a lot bigger than I was initially, and I'm very happy with it. And there's going to be a time in the future where I go back on a cycle. I'm going to pack on more size and then cycle back down and do the whole blast cruise thing again. But what's interesting to me, and what I kind of want to highlight for people, is something that I never believed was possible, which is that you could go on a cycle, and it doesn't have to be a long cycle, as long as you fucking push hard and put in the work at the gym, and you don't necessarily have to bulk the whole time. Again, I bulked for 3 weeks of the 3 months. The rest of it was a little surplus sometimes, and then a little deficit other times. Sometimes maintenance. I was not bulking. But now, I'm in that same strategy, a surplus some days, and then when I start seeing myself basically getting a little fat and my cheeks look a little fucking chubby, I cycle back down on calories, and I'm in a deficit for a day or two to just get back to the baseline leanness that I need to get at. And at no point during this time now, where I am currently, do I feel weak at the gym. Have I lost any strength? Okay, the strength that I gained on cycle, I've effectively kept it, minus maybe 1 or 2 reps at the weight that I'm pushing. I sleep pretty good, at least 6.5 hours a night, sometimes 7. That's pretty much where I'm at right now. On a good night, it's just 7 solid hours of sleep. And I'm only running 100 milligrams of test a week. Okay, I'm injecting 14 milligrams in the glute with a 5/8 inch needle every single day and 250 IU a day, split up into 2 injections morning and evening every day. That's all I'm running, for about a month or so. I was running 3 to 5 milligrams of Anavar, but it was giving me side effects, and I ran out of it. So the Anavar really didn't contribute all that much. So let's talk about a couple things. I started out lean, okay? Started out lean and defined, but small. Now, right around that time, I was running 120 to 150 milligrams a week of tests. My physique was cut, but I couldn't fill out a shirt. My libido was good. Sexual function was like pretty good, but generally strength plateaued and my gym progress kind of stalled. I chose 560 milligrams of test enanthate per week because it's enough. I figured it would be enough to grow, not enough to bloat, or to like shut down my central nervous system. I put in a lot of work. Every single day I was at the gym doing that split that I described before, and I ended up with chest density, fuller, rounder delts, a good degree of vascularity, and strength that lasted. Like, what's that? What I would estimate is that I kept between 70 and 85% of the mass that I had built during that cycle and at the absolute peak time of the cycle, which again was right there. That's like, peak bigness, if you will. Now, the reason that I think that I kept gains here is I think number one, like the pre-blast foundation, I was in good health. I was running a TRT dose. I still went to the gym every day. I ate pretty well. I got stable sleep. I wasn't abusing any drugs. I wasn't using any recreational drugs, and I didn't drink a lot. During the blast, it was just testosterone. There was a brief period of running a little bit of Proviron, and all that did was dry me out. Proviron does not help you to add mass. I wasn't running any orals, wasn't running any fucking dirty stacks. I was not doing anything wacky. It was just test. Post-blast, I didn't PCT, okay? I didn't do any sort of PCT. All I did was lower the dose, tape in a tapered fashion down to 300 milligrams for a brief period, and then down to 100 milligrams after that. What I think the critical thing is that I actually built through the work at the gym and through maintaining a healthy lifestyle, real tissue and not just transient pump weight. There's a big difference there. If you go on a cycle of tests, like call it 350 milligrams or above, but you only do that for a month and a half as an example, and you don't maintain the lifestyle in between, and you don't really work to increase the central nervous system strength, the strength part of things, that really does need to increase. That's going to help you retain the mass. But if you don't do those things, you're going to kind of have a transient pump. If the test dose isn't high and you're not pushing for actual sustainable strength increases, and then when you're off the cycle, you're basically just going to kind of look small again. So following my strategy, which I'm not a bodybuilder by any means, nor do I want to be one. I just want to make that clear for people. I'm a TRT guy that mostly focuses on sexual function. Like 95% of my focus is clients that have got sexual dysfunction. I've got to help them out of that. But I was able to adequately and, pretty efficiently utilize the whole blast cruise dynamic and end up on the other side, having looked at it, looking at it now, like being pretty successful. I do think to gain enough size that you're going to have sustainable mass that you can actually keep on a lower dose of test, that you need to be running a cycle for at least 2.5 months. I would suggest 3 months. That's how long I ran my cycle. I think that it might be useful, rather than cycling from the cycle of 500 milligrams or 700 milligrams a week down to 100 or 120, to find some in-between spot and run that for 3 weeks to a month, which is what I did at 300 milligrams, basically sports TRT. Then you go down to your ultimate TRT dose that you want to be sustainable over time. And in doing that, I ultimately went from this to this to that, with some leftover sauciness. Hope that's been useful. Again, I'm not a bodybuilder. This is just my experience. That's what happened to me. That's how I was able to do it. I'm still strong as fuck. I still feel fucking amazing on 100 milligrams a week. I don't have to use an AI at this point. Again, I have the optional use of intermittent Anavar if I need it, really just for pumps and aids the strength, which will ultimately aid in more tissue building. But again, I haven't been taking that for a while. The whole thing is just to show you my journey, but also like I am surprised. I'm surprised that at this point I was able to retain that mass, and the process by which I did it, I explained to you, and hopefully that helps some people if you're wanting to run a cycle. Also knowing that, like, yeah, my lipids were a little skewed. Hematocrit had gotten up. I think apolipoprotein B or ApoB was elevated during the cycle. So just something for folks to think about. But every single one of my markers, biomarkers, especially lipids, have gone down and are now back in a pretty perfect range post-cycle. and I'm left with most of the mess. As I said in the beginning, the bulk of what I do is coaching people on TRT. Now, yes, I can help you to build a cycle, and I've got clients like that, but the bulk of what I do is help people get out of sexual dysfunction. Listen, you can get anabolism, energy, confidence, masculinity on TRT just kind of no matter what as a default. But what you don't always get on TRT is adequate sexual function, because the hormonal system, penile tissue, DHT conversion, estradiol, all these things heavily influence sexual function, specifically libido and erections. My specialty in coaching has been resolving libido and erection issues on HRT, on cycles, on just regular TRT. I mean, regarding ancillaries and DHT derivatives, etc., I just know what to do in every situation to fix these problems. So if you're having issues with that, please book me for either a one-off call or a 1 month, a 3 month, or a 6 month package. These are one-on-one coaching packages where you've got me for an extended period of time. As one of the reviews say, believe me, I am a perfectionist and I will get results with you. Buy my nootropic stack. This thing took me 15 years and consulting a lot of executives and learning the ins and outs of both neurology as well as nootropic chemicals and pharmacology. I ended up building one. It's called Torque. I mean, it's in my opinion, one of the most powerful nootropics out there. Buy it in under a minute, livecortex.com. Get a chip to your doorstep. Take 2 capsules. Be on your way. Believe me, it's powerful. Well, all right. Give me this. Brother. It has been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. Hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you have a great day the rest of this day. Do me 2 favors, please. Like the video. It makes a huge difference to our channel. It makes YouTube push our content out to other people that probably need this information. So do me that favor. I'll do you many favors in return. Sub to the channel. If you're new to this channel, so much more breakdowns on this stuff, cycling, TRT itself, dosing, high doses, low doses, AIs, DHT derivatives, specifically sexual function. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Lots of content in the past and much more content moving forward. Otherwise, hope you have a great rest of your day. Kick ass, rock on. Thanks for being with me, and I'll talk to you boys in the next one.